I'm Crosby Kemper. I'm the director of the library, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here in an event that is sponsored. Every year we do an event on Milton Friedman's birthday, sponsored by the Friedman Foundation, and so this is the latest in a long series. Also, we have the support of the Show Me Institute, whose chair I am, by the way, and the Kansas Policy Institute, and there's information at the back about those folks. I want to preface this with two slightly off-topic, but not really off-topic, remarks. The first I want to say is we represent, as the library, all political views, and we regularly have left, right, and center political views in the library. In fact, over the last year and a half, Henry Fortunato and I were looking at our list, and we have rather more from the left side of the political spectrum in that time period than we have from the right, or perhaps from the center, depending on how you define the center politically. So I wanted to let everyone know that, because it is an interesting fact that we occasionally get criticism for having programs like this, which may be said to represent the right or the libertarian right, or in this particular case, school choice. We never have been criticized from the right for having a speaker from the left. I think that's interesting. So I just wanted to say that if you look at our schedule, we regularly have programs from all sides of the political spectrum, and we're interested in having more debate, particularly on topics such as education. We do have an ongoing series we call What Works in Urban Education, which has represented all views in regard to what the research shows is working, and we believe that that's had an effect on the attitudes of the school board. We've invited school board members. We've invited members of the MCPSA to these meetings. They're the Charter School Association, et cetera. So I wanted to make that statement. The second statement I want to make, slightly off topic, but really very related to this. Those of you who are regular attendees to these programs will be hearing more of this. Kansas City is the capital of something called tax increment financing. And tax increment financing and Chapter 100s and Chapter 353s, there's a whole menu of these things, are tax abatement or tax diversion. That is, the city takes the property tax and some other taxes, but the primary vehicle is the property tax, and gives it back to the developer of a piece of property. They don't actually pay taxes, is the point. And that stimulates certain kinds of development. Kansas City does more of this than any other city in the United States. If we had real economic development, that wouldn't be a problem, but rarely, the city council basically is choosing winners and losers and the winners all tend to be, I won't name names tonight, I did last week. I really feel like naming names, but I won't. They tend to be the larger corporations, law firms, the people who are doing really well and have leverage on the city. This is not a universal tax break that's available to everyone. It is available only to the select few, usually the folks who have good development lawyers. This building was actually built with a TIF. We were supposed to get out of this building, it was before my time, but before it was supposed to get the upstairs library and an auditorium in this space out of the TIF and the public-private partnership that we engaged in with the owners of the tower. In fact, there was not enough money to even finish the upstairs, much less do this, so I had to raise $5 million to do this. Failed TIF. And the point I want to make is, because this is about education tonight, is this money comes from the library and the school district. It also comes from the charter schools because they're a part of the tax base, the property tax base. And so whenever one of these deals you read about, and there are about 5 of them right now that have been in the paper, most of them are here on the plaza. There are companies that are located here on the plaza who will not be paying property tax that normally they would pay to the library, to the school district, to the charter schools, for the education of kids, for the kids that we, the library, serve. Voters and taxpayers don't know about this. That's why I'm talking about it. I think it's your right to know about this. It hurts the library, it hurts the school district, it hurts the charter schools. I hope you'll pay attention to who's getting the money when you read about this in the Star. The Star has written 2 editorials last week about this, on our side about this, and indeed any good public policy, I think, would be on our side about this. So that's my political statement for the night. I'm going to introduce tonight Patrick Ishmael. Patrick has in fact written a lot about these topics. He's an analyst for the Show Me Institute, and Patrick and I have worked together on doing some analytical pieces about tax credits in Missouri and the problems therein. He's a sterling analyst, and he will introduce our speaker tonight. Patrick, thank you.
Well, thank you, Crosby, and thank you all for being with us tonight, and good evening. The Show Me Institute, the Kansas Policy Institute, and the Kansas City Public Library are pleased to welcome you tonight to tonight's celebration of the Milton Friedman Legacy for Freedom Day. Dr. Friedman would have celebrated his 100th birthday this year, tomorrow, in fact, and we are here to remember his contributions to advance school choice. Undoubtedly, Dr. Friedman has left an indelible legacy that both we at the Show Me Institute and we at the Kansas Policy Institute strive to uphold. At state-level think tanks that promote liberty, we know the next generation must have the skills and the resources to be able to succeed and to lead. That is why we promote removing barriers to educational excellence so that all children receive high-quality education that they all deserve. We do this by promoting public policy initiatives that will empower children and their parents to make the best educational decisions for their individual needs. In fact, today the Show Me Institute released a case study, which is actually in the back, entitled Virtual Blended with Traditional Learning Can Cut Costs and Help Students. It's a mouthful, but it's worth your time. It's a study that details the benefits of blending digital educational models into traditional public school systems. Again, we have this case study in the back on the back table, and I encourage you to take a copy. But on to tonight's main event. Tonight we are honored to welcome Miss Virginia Walden Ford. After experiencing the frustration and disappointment of the public school system, the system's inability to adequately educate her son, she became an advocate for school choice. In 1998, she founded DC Parents for School Choice. Serving as the organization's executive director, she has worked tirelessly to empower parents to make appropriate educational decisions for their children. Her efforts paid off in 2003 with the passage of the DC School Choice Incentive Act, legislation that gave children trapped in failing public schools a chance to receive opportunity scholarships that helped them attend schools that would provide them with a better education. Among her many awards and recognitions are the Heritage Foundation's prestigious Salvatore Prize for American Citizenship, the Leonard F. DeFiore Parental Choice Advocate Award from the National Catholic Education Association, and the John T. Walton Champions for School Choice Award from the Alliance for School Choice. Ms. Walden Ford is also the author of Voices, Choices, and Second Chances, How to Win the Battle to Bring Opportunity Scholarships to Your State, a book that describes her successful campaign to bring school choice to DC and provides parents with the tools they need to free their children from failing schools. Please join me in giving a warm Kansas and Missouri welcome to Ms. Virginia Walden Ford.
Good evening. I am so excited to be here, and I'd like to thank the library and the Show Me Institute and the Kansas Policy Institute for inviting me here. And everybody can hear me, I hope. For me to get started, I need to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Arkansas, and currently, actually, I live in Arkansas. I've been back there about a year. Was a child of the mid-'60s, when schools were just beginning to get desegregated, was the daughter of teachers, and our parents were just excited educators that wanted to make sure that our children had the opportunity to get the education they deserved. But then, you know, you grow up and you have a family. And I have 3 children, and I began to see in Washington that, wait a minute, I'm having, it's making a noise. That my children were not getting the kind of education they deserved. Now, I had 2 children who were pretty academically driven, and so they were able to navigate the traditional public school system and get through fairly well. I was really pleased. But then there's always that one child who needs a little bit more, that one child who you look at and say, this is the child that could really get lost, and nobody seems to be paying attention. And at that point, I began to talk to the school system about what can we do to help William. This was my youngest son. And nobody responded. Nobody told me what to do. Nobody helped me figure out what to do for him. And I thought at that time, there should be more help to give parents some hope, you know, to encourage parents to be involved and to know what to do with their children, especially those kids that needed a little bit of help. But I was dismissed as a parent. And people that know me, my sister is here, my cousins are here with me tonight, I don't give up very easily, and I don't get dismissed very easily. And I decided that I needed to do something to make a difference, to advocate on behalf of kids, to fight for my own child. So what began as one mother's voice, mine, to fight for one child, William, became a passion and something that has engulfed my life for the last 2 decades. And we made a difference, but it was a hard fight. So Milton Friedman is a hero of mine, and what he said to me when I first got involved in this is never give up. Continue to fight for children as long as you can. Make sure that you're a part of a conversation that allows parents to have a voice in what happens with their children's education. And so it's with delight and honor that I've come to participate in a celebration of his 100th birthday. And it's quite exciting. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what we did in DC and ultimately what we're doing in Arkansas, and hopefully some of these lessons can be brought to Missouri and Kansas, and there can be a way where children in Missouri and Kansas can have an opportunity to be educated in a quality educational environment. In the 90s, my youngest son, the one I just talked about, got a scholarship to attend a private school in DC. I was a single mother, raising kids. Private school was not something I could even think about. I was forced to send my child to a school that I did not think was serving him well. And then someone came along and said, you send him wherever you want, and we'll pay for it. And I said, great, okay. So we spent some time looking at schools in DC, and we chose a Catholic high school. Now, this was a child that had been failing repeatedly from day one. I mean, there were teachers that said, something's wrong with that boy, he cannot learn, you know. And, but I didn't ever believe that, ever. So with a scholarship, we found a school that responded to him, you know, that met his needs, where he could be successful. And he finished school in 2000 with almost a 4-point grade point average. And, you know, this was the same child that educators had told me for years would never amount to anything. Finished high school, went to college, was successful, just went to the military, served his country, was deployed twice, is a wonderful young man. And I couldn't be prouder of him. But too many of our children all over this nation are being told you cannot succeed. So we have to find ways to make sure that they do succeed. I believe I read somewhere that only 55% of Kansas kids are proficient. That's unacceptable. You know, we have to make sure that all kids are doing well or above average. You know, we have to make sure that they're learning at ways that will ensure that they have some success for the future. And so in DC, we found that there were, most of the kids in DC were way below grade average. And so we knew that we needed to provide some kind of way to change that situation. So in the early 2000s, we advocated on behalf of the children of the district and went to Congress and talked to them about creating programs out of the box, something different that would really make a difference in getting kids into quality educational environments. Now, we had just started having charter schools in DC. I believe there were about 20 at that time. And so we saw that some of those schools were succeeding and kids were doing well. We also saw that there were private schools in the city where kids were doing well. And we knew that if we could find a way where parents would have any choice that they wanted, where they could choose a public charter school or they could choose a private school and have resources, then this would be the answer on the telephone when a parent would call our organization and say, what do I do? Then I could say, here are your options. And so we took it to Capitol Hill. And DC is a tough city. And it's really tough for citizens in DC because the city is controlled by the federal government, and even though we have a local government, it's still very much controlled by the feds. And so we had to take our fight to Congress. And time again, members of Congress said to us, well, it's not our problem. This is DC. Let somebody else handle it. Time and time again. And at some point, I said, well, if this is not your problem, who do we go to find a way for district kids to do well, to have some opportunities? I mean, where do we find out that information if this is not your problem? And I think at some point, some member of Congress said, it is our responsibility to take care of the children of the district because it is the District of Columbia and somebody has to take care of them. So we spent 10 years fighting to get vouchers in DC, and everybody cringes when they say that word, but that's what they are. And we call them scholarships, we call them DC Opportunity Scholarship Program. But the only reason we were successful is because the families in the district stood up and said, this is what we want. We want to be able to have something different for our children. And those of us that were trying to lead these kind of efforts, we said, well, we'll stand with you. And we took thousands and thousands of parents up on Capitol Hill to talk to legislators about what was best for district kids. And ultimately, in 2004, it passed in 2003, and President Bush signed it into law in 2004. And the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program was implemented. And that's what I want to tell you a little bit about, because I think these anecdotal kinds of stories about why we do what we do really make a difference in how people are willing to fight. When I first started going out into the community and talking to families about the program, there was a lot of resistance. People are scared. How do we get in the program? How it's going to affect our lives? How it's going to affect our children's lives? And so we spent time giving them the facts and making them understand that if you don't stand up for your children, nobody else will. And that they had that kind of responsibility. So they began to get involved in signing up for this program. But the outcomes right away were incredible. We had kids who never, ever thought about graduating from high school, who never thought about going on to college, who lived in environments where there was so many challenges that it was overwhelming to them. And so going the next step, going to be successful educationally, was just not something that was a part of their makeup. And we found those children, once they were in these programs, they began to thrive. And it answered a question for me that I had been trying to get answered. If you put kids in environments that work for them, will they not thrive? And I wondered about that, and then I began to see that happen. I began to see those children meet incredible expectations and do really well and begin to matriculate through an educational system successfully. And the payoff, the absolute payoff, was watching 91% of those kids in the program graduate from high school versus 70% of kids that normally graduate from DC high schools. And when they do graduate, many of them have to have remediation before they can go to college. Our kids didn't. They went to college, they went to some of the finest schools in the country, and they succeeded. And those are the kind of things that gave me incentives to continue to advocate on behalf. Milton Friedman said, if you give parents the opportunity to make choices for their children, then that's the key to it. And we see that now. Parents are making incredible choices, sending their kids to schools that are really working for them. Schools that really meet their needs. A parent called me once and said, my child made an A. He's ninth grade, he has never made an A. And I said, that's really exciting. And she said, but I found a school that, where he could do acting and drama and all those kinds of things. He was always kind of dramatic. But we found a school, a performing arts school, that really worked for him. And so he was succeeding. Or another child was very good with his hands. I mean, he was constantly pulling stuff apart and putting stuff back together successfully. Wonder where he should go to school. He should go somewhere where people do something with their hands. So he went to a vocational charter school and succeeded. I mean, to me, it's about finding what works for the children. I don't care what the delivery system is. I don't care whether it's traditional public schools that are quality or vouchers or charter schools, if it works for the children. And I believe that in this country, that's what we have to stay focused on. We got to make sure that we're looking at what the children need, not what adults need, what the children need. And that's always been my focus. I stay involved in what the kids need. And when I advocate on behalf of the children, that's what it is. It's for the children. It's not for the adults. People want me to talk about, oftentimes, about teacher development and about great teachers. There are some. They're wonderful teachers. My parents, my sisters were wonderful teachers. People sometimes want me to talk about politics. I'm not a politician. I'm a parent. And so I'll let somebody else do that. But if you ask me about kids, I can tell you thousands of stories about children succeeding, about kids really making it. Now, I stand with those other folk, because they have a role to play in all of this too. But somebody has to stand with parents and with children. And that's my focus, is making sure that parents know that they have every right in this country to stand up and advocate for their kids. People don't know that oftentimes. People think that they have to be silent, that our breakfast table discussions are all we need to do, and we don't have any outlet for them. So you sit at the table with your family members or your friends, and you go, I hate what's going on, but I don't know what to do about it. So we learned that there is something you can do. You can speak out on behalf of your child. The very first time I ever testified before a legislative body was before a committee of the House of Representatives. I remember sitting at the table, and there was a group of congressmen in front of me, and I was telling them about my kids, and I was telling them about my experiences in education, and they were listening. And I thought, well, this is the coolest thing in the world. I'm just a private citizen, and members of Congress are listening to what I have to say. I mean, you're talking about an empowering moment for me. And for there were two other mothers on that panel, and it was incredible. But what it showed me is that if all of us had an opportunity to be in front of somebody that really listened, then so much can be changed. They told us right away, nothing would ever change in DC because parents would not speak out. And I said, you're wrong. And so we organized thousands of these same parents that people said wouldn't say nothing, and we flooded Capitol Hill. Were we afraid? Absolutely. You know, did we risk things? I'm sure we did. Did we make sacrifices? Yep. But we went. And we told members of Congress what we wanted for our kids. And we were going to be here every day. And so we did. We went every day for a year. And they finally heard us even more. And they finally said, you know, sometimes I think they just got tired of us, and so they said, let's pass something, get rid of these people. But that was okay, because we still got our way. And so that's kind of what I really strongly believe in. As I carry the message around the country, and I've been so blessed to be able to take this message, what I say to those folk that are in the cities I'm visiting is, fight for these kids. You know, stand up. Become empowered with information. You know, talk to legislators. You know, meet with legislators. Talk to policy experts. Tell them what you want. Know that there are people like Show Me Institute and Kansas Policy Institute that are there beside you. You're never alone. In 20 years, 2 decades of doing this, I have never felt alone. You know, I knew that there were incredible resources that were available to me if I was only willing to speak out. And I was. Because there's nothing more important than saving the life of my son. Nothing. And every parent I talk to feels exactly the same way. So we move along and we do these kind of things and we fight, and that's why I'm here. I'm going to celebrate Milton saying to me, "Don't give up." I'm going to celebrate his life and his legacy of making sure that citizens were empowered and were able to speak about what they wanted, because that's what he was all about. He was about us making a difference in our lives. And I appreciate that. You know, I cannot even tell you how Milton Friedman changed my life. You know, I mean, I'm an African-American woman in DC, and I listened, and I heard, and I believed that I could do anything I wanted to do. And I accomplished a lot of things, but I stood with lots of folk, you know, a lot of parents who just need to know that they can accomplish things. So as I close, what I want you to remember here is you can do it. You can fight. If we can make a difference in this country from Washington, D.C., I'm currently in Arkansas, and I just started the Arkansas Parent Network, and we're going to make a difference there. You know, so I'm not stopping. I just changed locations, and I'm going to continue to fight on behalf of children. And I hope you hear what I'm saying. I'm fighting for children, you know, for this next generation of kids. I'm going to make sure that I have a hand in making sure they get a quality education. Thank you.